Today we're talking about how to load your foot properly for exercise, improving foot function, improving balance, and then how does that correlate into athletic performance and maybe getting out of pain. So a lot of things get talked about with the foot of how to create this tripod action. You may have heard of short foot. So in this scenario, what we want to work on is we have to create basically synergistic action of the muscles of the foot from the top and bottom. So the extensors and the flexors and side to side, which really comes into muscles that wrap up around the calf. So on the outside we have the fibularis group. Down the inside we kind of have the posterior tibialis, somewhat of the soleus as well. The flexors of the big toe, the flexors of the foot obviously help as well. But one of the big keys here is we want to see a good loading pattern where we have pressure behind the big toe, behind the pinky toe, and then in the middle of the heel. So that's our first tripod. Then what we have to establish is that all 5 toes actually have some function, so we wouldn't be able to pick them up off the ground. What you'll see with some people is they'll buckle. So if you look at my finger, that would be a mismatch between the short flexor, the flexor that attaches to the middle portion of your toe, versus the long flexor that attaches to the distal portion of your toe. And when you get that basically long flexor that dominates that, which a lot of us do because we're in footwear or foot coffins, whatever you want to call it, you'll see this buckling or this kind of crinkle. So I always tell people, like, it looks like you're an eagle going ready to catch a fish out of the water. So you want to see those toes flat pressed into the floor, but maybe blanched a little bit so we have activity. Now, activating your foot. This gets talked about quite a bit, and what we'll see is we focus so much on the medial arch that we do what? We turn that leg out excessively like this. So if I'm facing the camera like this, and look what happens with the arch when we do that. It looks amazing, but all you've done is externally rotate your tibia. Well, if we're going to go through full ankle dorsiflexion, at some point we're going to have to internally rotate our tibia. So the key here is 2 things. We don't want to use other mechanics to create an effect downstream. 2, when I externally rotate my tibia and have to use that to kind of support the medial arch or that medial longitudinal arch, I've probably offloaded the ball of my foot, which is a big deal for a lot of people. They'll, let's say we're in a squat and they get into this position. It looks good, but if we looked at the load pattern, they're offloading the medial arch. Well, now all of the musculature on the outside of the entire leg, all the way up into the glute complex, has to work differently than it should. Things like this happen with running, because running in particular throws us into almost this supinated or outward cast position. So let's review one more time. Pressure in the ball of the foot or behind the big toe, behind the pinky toe, middle of the heel, equal action side to side, flat press the toes. From there, we should be able to, balance, pick up the leg. You might see, some side to side action, but we're not going to see the ball of the foot lift. We're not going to see the outside of the foot lift. We definitely don't want to see the toes up in the air. And that is the start and the basis of how we load our foot from just a static position, and then we have to take that into a lot of dynamic exercises and activities.